Hey guys, it's Ben here from BW Design, and today this is what we'll be creating. Alright, so it's been quite a while since I've done an After Effects tutorial. I had some spare time today and I thought I'll get this out for you guys and give you something to watch. It is pretty simple and straightforward, but hopefully you'll pick up a few tips along the way. It's been pretty hectic here lately with the release of my new training series for Cinema 4D last week. That's currently available through Vimeo on demand, and hopefully I've got some resellers coming on board to help me distribute that later on. But I'll talk about where you can get that later on if you're interested. For now, let's just jump into After Effects and get started. So the first thing we want to do before we start is make sure we're working in 32 bits per channel, just so we get a nicer glow. If you hold down Control Alt Shift and press K on the keyboard, under your color settings, just make sure the depth is set to 32 bits. Okay, so choose OK. Then we want to get a new comp, and we'll call this one Source. This is where we're going to put our logo or text. We'll make it 1280 by 720 and 5 seconds long. Just choose OK. Then I'm just going to drag in my logo in this case. So I'll bring it in, make it about 60% so it sits within the frame. And we can get another new composition, and we'll call this one Effects, and the same settings will be fine. So choose OK. Then we want to right click, go new, get a new solid, and what we want to do is add the circle effect from the effects and presets. So drag that on, and we want to change the radius up a bit, set the edge mode to thickness and radius, and dial up this thickness just a bit so it's still within the frame. Then at frame 0 here, I'm going to keyframe this center value, drag it to the lower left of the frame and make sure it's just out, and then come out a couple of seconds and drag it to the top right out of frame. So we end up with this. Then what we're going to do is add the mosaic effect, so just drag that on. Then what we want to do is Control D to make a copy, drag it below, delete the mosaic effect off that copy, and add the turbulent displace effect. Then we can change the displacement mode to cross displacement, make the amount about 2800 to start with, and the size 4, and that looks pretty good. We'll just stretch it out a bit more so it comes outside of this first layer here a bit more. That looks pretty good. Then the top one, let's set it to about 55%. And then we'll go Control Alt Y on the keyboard, call that adjustment layer grid, and drag it to the bottom of the stack. And then we want to add the grid effect. So put that on. We want to change the size from to width and height sliders, and we'll go 8 and 8 in width and height. We'll invert the grid and we'll make it 50% opacity. Then we'll set its track matte mode to luma matte, and this is what we get. So that's a good start. So then we'll add a new comp. We'll just call it main or something like that. 1280 by 720, all the same. Choose OK. Then we're going to drag in our source comp and our effects comp above that, and set the source track matte mode to luma matte. And that'll make sure that the logo is only revealed as that effect passes over it. I can actually get this effect out of there and close this up, so we're only seeing the comps we've made in the tutorial. So that's looking pretty good to start with. Now what we want to do is add a few effects to this source. So first one we need is find edges. Let's just drag that on and make sure we invert it. And let's add the tint effect. Just make sure it's black and white. Then we can add a glow. And then on the white color picker of the tint, let's just add whatever color we like to that. We'll get like a bluish green or something. Then we can change the glow radius. We can see what we've got here, starting to take shape. Just play around with these until you get what you like. That's looking pretty good. Now what we can do is drag in another copy of our source to the bottom of the stack and set our top source blend mode to add. Okay, so this is what we have now. And on the bottom one, we're just going to hit T on the keyboard, keyframe its opacity from 0 to 100, and we can just shift it across a bit so the effect starts happening before it fades in, and then set another keyframe just after the second one and just fade it out. We want to make all this sort of happen though as the effect is going on. A bit more like that. Let's just play that back. It's probably a little bit fast. If the effect is happening too quick, come into the effects comp and grab the top two layers, hit U on the keyboard and just drag out their keyframes. That'll slow it down a bit. Should be a bit better now. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. Then what we can do is grab these top two layers, Control Shift C to pre-compose them, and we'll call them logo pre-comp or something like that. So now we've lost the look that we had. All we have to do is change the blending mode to add, and we have that back now. So that's fine. Now let's make a copy of this. So Control D to duplicate it. And we want to just drag these copies below this first one here. So we want that blue look at the top of the stack. So our first copy is down here below. What we want to do is add the tint to it. And in the white color picker, let's just set that to pink. And we'll add another copy, drag that to the bottom, and let's just make it green. And select both of these new copies, set them to screen. And what I want to do, we'll start with the bottommost one here. I just want to nudge that a couple of pixels to the left. So I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard, just 1, 2 on that one. The one above, just go to the right. So now we can sort of see we've got a little bit of an offset here. It's just a very subtle effect, but if we have a look at without it, it's just one line and it's really clean. With it though, we've got a bit more of that 3D kind of look. So we can play around with the colors as well to see what we can get. And if you want, you can nudge it a little bit more as well. It's just something small that I added. I thought it looked pretty cool. So that's not too bad at all. So now what we can do is just add a ramp to the background, just get a new solid, call it BG, drag it to the bottom of the stack, add the ramp effect, swap the colors, change it from linear ramp to radial, and drag this white down to a dark grey. And then we have it. So that's pretty much exactly what I ended up with in the example as well. If we have a look at it, it's very similar to what we just created. One thing that is pretty cool to play with is just come into these grey solids we created and just try different effects on here. The way I came up with this was just through experimentation, just trying a few different things, and often that's the way you will create some cool looks and effects. So I do encourage you to sort of go in and have a play with that. But yeah, if we look at the final one again, we can see it's pretty much identical. I also, in my source on this example here, if I go into it, let me see, I've got a text example here too. You can just switch off the logo just to show that it can work with anything. Go back into the demo comp, just play this back at full screen. So that's the whole idea of adding the source comp in there. So you can just whack anything in and the effects will apply. Well, that's it for another tutorial, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you learned something. If you want to check out more of my free tutorials, just head over to benwattsdesign.com and you'll see a whole page full of Cinema 4D and After Effects tutorials here. and if you just click into these, you'll be able to get the project files. As mentioned, through the week I released my first training series for Cinema 4D, and you can get to that just here through the website, or if you have a look in the description below this video, there's a link. That link will take you to a Vimeo on demand page where you can rent this for a week for $15 or buy it outright for $25 and download the videos. But basically, it's 5 chapters covering everything from modeling, fracturing, X particles, turbulence, FD, a whole bunch of stuff, which ends up being this ground collapsing effect here. So any support given through that, guys, is much appreciated. Thanks once again, and I'll see you soon in another tutorial.